My name is Paige, and for 13 years I told myself one thing every time I skipped a vacation, packed my own lunch, drove a car with 140,000 miles on it, and put every extra dollar into savings. This is what it looks like to build something real. The number in my account was $162,000. That's not a round number, and I'm not rounding it. Every dollar had a story. I kept a spreadsheet, not out of obsession, but because when you're a single mom working in medical billing, and the only person standing between your kid and a lifetime of renting, you track every dollar like it matters. Because it does. That account had one purpose: a down payment on a house. Not a big house. A house with a yard where my daughter could have a dog. A house where she'd have her own room with a door that actually locked. A house that was ours. I found out the money was gone on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting in the parking lot of my office building eating a granola bar because I'd worked through breakfast. And I opened my banking app to check a transfer I'd made the week before. The balance read $0. I sat there for a solid minute thinking the app had crashed. I refreshed it, still zero. I went to the transaction history and saw one entry: full withdrawal, authorized user. The authorized user was my brother. I drove to his house with my hands so tight on the steering wheel, my knuckles turned white. I'd added him to that account 11 years ago when my daughter was a toddler, and I'd had a health scare. Nothing serious as it turned out, but serious enough that a coworker pulled me aside and said, "Do you have anyone who can access your accounts if something happens to you?" I didn't. So I called my brother because he was the responsible one in the family, the one with a stable job and a head for numbers, the one I trusted. He answered the door in a fleece vest, holding a coffee mug, looking like a man who had absolutely no idea his world was about to tilt. "You took it," I said, not a question. He didn't flinch. He stepped aside, set his mug on the counter and said, "Paige, let me explain." What he explained was this. He and his wife had found an investment property 3 months ago. A turnkey deal, he said. The kind that doesn't come around twice. They needed capital fast. They'd looked at the joint account, seen the balance, and decided that since I'd been renting just fine for 15 years, a little more time wouldn't hurt me. He'd planned to tell me after closing. He'd planned to pay it back over time. He'd planned a lot of things he had never once mentioned to me. "You've been renting for 15 years, Paige," he said. "What's another few? This property is going to appreciate 30% in 2 years. You'll get every dollar back with interest." I stared at him. My voice came out very quiet the way it does when I'm past screaming. That money was for Chloe's home. He actually shrugged. "Chloe's 15. She's not buying a house tomorrow." I walked out without another word. I sat in his driveway and called my dad. He picked up on the second ring, and the first thing he said was, "Oh honey, I was afraid of this." He'd known something was happening. My brother had mentioned moving some family money around a couple months back, but my dad said he assumed it was a loan they'd both agreed on. He didn't know I hadn't been asked. He didn't know I hadn't agreed. When I told him the full amount, he breathed out slowly, like a man deflating. "I should have asked more questions," he said. "I'm sorry, Paige." I'd heard my dad apologize maybe 3 times in my life. The words felt strange coming through the phone. My brother's logic wasn't new to me, even if the scale of it was. Growing up, I was the one who managed, the one who figured it out. When things got hard, my parents worried about my brother. He was younger, more sensitive. He needed the extra cushion. I was older, I was capable, I would be fine. That phrase had followed me my entire adult life like a shadow. Paige will be fine. She'll work extra shifts when her relationship falls apart and she has no backup plan. She'll skip the weekend trips and the concerts and the vacations. She'll say not this year every year for 13 years because she is saving for something real. And she'll keep quiet about it because she doesn't need a trophy. She just needs that house. My brother had taken that framing, that I was endlessly reliably fine, and used it as permission. That evening, my boyfriend came over with takeout bags and a look on his face that told me he already knew something was wrong. He's the kind of person who listens with his whole body, and when I finished talking, he didn't reach for a silver lining. He just said, "Okay, you have proof, right?" I had everything. 13 years of bank statements showing deposits and 0 significant withdrawals until that single, catastrophic one. Screenshots of every time I'd logged in and noted the balance. The original account agreement with both our names on it. "Then you're not starting from nothing," he said. "You're starting from evidence." We spent 2 days making a plan. First, I went to the bank and sat down with a branch manager. Legally, he told me, a joint account meant both parties had full access to funds. I'd expected that speech. What I needed was documentation. He provided a notarized statement confirming the withdrawal date, the full amount, and the authorized user who executed it. Then I called a lawyer a colleague had recommended. Her name was Loretta, and she had the kind of measured voice that made me feel like she had handled far worse than this. She reviewed my documents in silence, asked 4 or 5 precise questions, and told me what I needed to hear alongside what I didn't want to hear. The good news: my documentation was strong. 13 years of consistent deposits, 0 withdrawals, a clear pattern of active accumulation. It painted an obvious picture of intent and ownership. The bad news: because it was legally a joint account, civil court was my most direct route. We'd argue unjust enrichment. He benefited without my consent from funds I had built entirely on my own. What about the property? I asked. The one they actually bought. Loretta tapped her pen once. That's your leverage. If your money funded that down payment, we can establish a direct financial link between your loss and their gain. Courts take that very seriously. I asked about criminal exposure. She said it depended on what else I could find, specifically, any evidence of misrepresentation in writing. I found it 4 days later. My sister-in-law ran a lifestyle Instagram account. I'd followed her for years out of obligation and had mostly tuned it out, but I went back through her posts from the month of the property purchase and found exactly what I was looking for. A photo of the house, a neat place with a wraparound porch, captioned, "Took some creative financing to make this happen, but we did it. Dreamsphere." In the comments, a friend had replied, "How did you swing this so fast?" Her response: "Let's just say my sister-in-law's savings account had been collecting dust long enough." I screenshotted it, sent it to Loretta, then sat very still. She knew exactly what she was doing. They both did. That was the night I told my daughter. I'd been putting it off. She was in the middle of finals and I didn't want to drop this on her. But she found me at the kitchen table with my laptop and a look I couldn't hide. She pulled out the chair across from me and sat down without being asked. I told her everything. She didn't cry right away. She listened, quiet and still, and then there was a long pause, and then she said in a voice so small it barely crossed the table, "Is that why we've never had a yard?" I lost it then. Not dramatically, but the way you lose it when you've been holding on too long, and someone says exactly the thing that undoes you. She came around the table and hugged me, and we stayed like that for a while without talking. When we finally pulled apart, she wiped her eyes and asked, "Did he even think about me when he did it?" I had no answer, and that silence told both of us everything we needed to know. My brother called twice that week. I didn't pick up. He sent a text saying he wanted to talk, that he had a plan to make things right. I forwarded it to Loretta and kept building my case. The housewarming party was announced in the family group chat 4 weeks later, balloon emojis, a time, an address. Everyone was invited, including me, as if my brother had decided that since he'd sent a text, the matter had been resolved. I didn't RSVP, but I went. My boyfriend drove. My dad met us there. The house was exactly as lovely as I'd imagined it would be. Hardwood floors, string lights on the porch, a backyard staged for the occasion. Relatives I hadn't seen in months wandered around with wine glasses, complimenting the kitchen, asking about the neighborhood. My brother moved through the crowd with his hand on his wife's back, both of them glowing the way people glow when they believe they've gotten away with something. My sister-in-law saw me first. Her smile flickered. My brother turned a second later and went very still. I let the evening settle. I watched the toasts, watched someone say, "Hard work always pays off," watched my brother clink glasses and smile. Then I waited for the natural lull, the quiet moment after the toast when people were refilling drinks, and I stepped into the center of the living room. "Can I have everyone's attention for just a minute?" The room shifted. I didn't wait for full silence. "I want to say something about this house. Because I think the people here who love my brother deserve to know how it happened." I pulled out the folder I'd been carrying under my arm. 13 years ago, I opened a savings account for one purpose: to buy a home for my daughter and me. Every paycheck I stretched, every trip I didn't take, everything I told myself I'd get later went into that account. By March of this year, it held $162,000. Someone near the back said, "Oh my God." On March 14th, my brother withdrew the entire balance without asking me, without telling me, and used it as the down payment on this property. I held up the bank statement, printed large, the single transaction line highlighted in yellow. This is the record. This is his name on it. My sister-in-law stepped forward. Paige, this is not the time. You made it the time, I said quietly, when you invited our entire family to celebrate a house that was bought with my daughter's future. I held up my phone, the Instagram comment, enlarged so it could be read from across the room. I read it aloud. Let's just say my sister-in-law's savings account had been collecting dust long enough. The room went completely silent. My brother's face had drained of color. He opened his mouth, closed it. A cousin near the hallway said very carefully, "Is that real?" "The documents are real," I said. "The lawyer I've retained is real, and the civil complaint we're prepared to file is real." I set the papers on the coffee table in front of me. I'm not here to ruin a party. I'm here because the people in this room who think my brother worked hard and did this on his own should know the truth, and because my daughter asked me last week whether her uncle ever thought about her when he took that money. I looked at my brother then. He didn't look angry. He looked the way people look when they realize there is no version of this they can charm their way out of. My dad stepped forward. His voice shook slightly, but it held. "Your sister is telling the truth," he said. "I should have said something months ago. I'm saying it now." I left shortly after. My boyfriend held my hand the whole drive home and didn't try to fill the silence. My daughter was waiting up. I told her what happened and she hugged me again, same as before, but lighter this time, like something that had been wounded very tight had finally started to loosen. The fallout came fast. Half the family rallied around my brother out of reflex, the way people do when the familiar story is easier than the true one. The other half reached out privately. "I'm glad someone finally said something. She's done this before. You're not crazy." One aunt told me my brother had borrowed money from her 3 years ago and never mentioned it again. She said she'd been afraid to bring it up. Mediation happened 6 weeks later. My brother arrived looking like a man who had rehearsed what he was going to say but kept forgetting his lines. He offered to pay back a portion over several years at no interest. Loretta countered with full restitution. He pushed back. She laid the bank timeline and the Instagram screenshot side by side on the table. He stopped pushing. The settlement required him to refinance the investment property, using the equity he'd already built, ironically, in part with my money, and repay me in a single lump sum. It took 4 months to finalize. When the wire hit my account, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the number for a long time without moving. Then I called a real estate agent. My daughter was with me the first time we walked through the house we eventually bought. It was a gray Craftsman on a quiet street, a small yard in back, a fig tree in the corner, and a bedroom with windows on 2 walls that she claimed immediately. She walked through the whole house slowly, touching door frames, standing in the middle of each room like she was taking measurements with her body. When we were standing in the backyard, she said, "We're really getting it." "We're really getting it," I said. She didn't jump or scream the way I'd half imagined. She just stood there in the afternoon light with her arms wrapped around herself, looking at the fig tree, and nodded once. The way you nod when something you stopped letting yourself want suddenly becomes real. As for my brother, we're not close anymore. We exchange texts on birthdays, pass updates through our dad. He's never apologized in any way that acknowledged what he actually did, only in the vague, soft-edged way people apologize when they want the subject dropped. I know this has all been hard. I stopped waiting for the real version a long time ago. What I know now is this: the people who count on you being fine are often counting on you not to say anything when they cross a line. I had spent 34 years being the one who managed, the one who figured it out, the one who didn't need the extra cushion because she was capable and reliable and would land on her feet. That reliability had become an open door. I closed it. My daughter has a yard now. She got a dog, named him after a vegetable because she's 16, and that's just the kind of decision she makes. She has a room with windows that face the morning and a door that locks, and on weekends she sits on the back steps with the dog in her lap and the fig tree dropping leaves into the grass. Some things are worth making a fuss about. A home for your kid turns out to be one of them.